We can start. Yeah.
Good afternoon, friends. On behalf of NIA, I extend a warm welcome to all the participants, panelists, and our director who has joined this webinar on deepening the insurance penetration, reimagining the value chain. According to Sigma 4 2020 report from Swiss Re, the insurance penetration in India stands at close to 3.7%. That is one of the lowest across the world. This provides a huge scope of future growth in the industry line with the medium-term economic growth prospects of the country and the large base of non-uninsured citizens. There seems to be a shift in the thought process of the evolving customers, competitors, and organizations that are challenging the traditional insurance businesses in India, their models and their existence. Of course, with evolving customers, insurers are already under tremendous pressure to change from time to time. So how do we do it? What are the challenges in doing so? And where do we go from here? So in order to address the related issues, we have with us eminent expert panelists from their respective field. Before I hand over the session to our director, Mr. G. Srinivasan, a brief introduction about the panelists for today. First in line is, let me have the privilege of introducing Mr. M.R. Kumar, Chairman LIC of India. He took charge as Chairman LIC of India on 14th March 2019. He joined LIC of India in 1983 as Direct Recruit Officer. In a career spanning more than 3.5 decades, he had held the unique privilege of heading 3 zones of LIC of India, that is Southern Zone, North Central Zone, and Northern Zone, headquartered at Chennai, Kanpur, and Delhi, respectively. He headed 2 prestigious divisions, that is in Ahmedabad in Western Zone and Ernakulam in Southern Zone as Senior Division Manager. He was also Regional Manager Marketing and, one second, my camera is off, sorry, yeah. So he was also Regional Manager Marketing and Regional Manager P&IR at Kolkata and Chennai. As an Executive Director, he headed the Personal Department as well as the Pension and Group Insurance vertical of the corporation. During his tenure, several initiatives were rolled out of the benefit for the employees. His rich experience working pan-India right from north to south and east to west, including the headland states of India while heading Carbon Zone, has given him a deep insight into the demographics and insurance potential of the country. Moreover, working in different streams of life insurance management, that is administrative, marketing, group, and social securities, has given him the twin advantages of enriched knowledge and clarity on processes and procedures in the life insurance industry. I welcome you, sir. Next panelist is Mr. Saurav Mukherjee. He is the founder and chief investment officer of Marcellus Investment Managers, incorporated in August 2018. He is the former CEO of Ambit Capital and played a key role in Ambit's rise as a broker and a wealth manager. Saurabh was educated at the London School of Economics, where he earned a BSc in Economics with first class honours and MSc in Economics with distinction in Macro and Microeconomics. In London, Saurabh was the co-founder of the Clear Capital, and in 2007 he was rated by the Extel survey as one of the top small cap analysts in UK. In India, Saurabh was rated as the leading equity strategist in 2015 and 2016 and also for 2017 by the Asia Money polls. Saurabh is a CFA charter holder and a SEBI registered investment advisor. In 2017, upon SEBI's invitation, he joined SEBI's Asset Management Advisory Committee. In 2019, Saurabh was part of the expert committee constituted by SEBI to update and upgrade the PMS regulations. Saurabh is also a writer. He has written 3 best-selling books, that is Gurus of Chaos in 2014, The Unusual Billionaires in 2016, and Coffee Can Investing, the low risk route to stupendous wealth in 2018. I welcome you on board, Saurabh.
Thank
Next
you.
panelist for the day is Mr. Srinath Sridharan. He is an experienced corporate leader, transformation enabler, leadership coach, and a columnist. He's a strategic counsel for 24 years with leading corporates across diverse sectors, including automobile, e-commerce, advertising, and financial services. He has led multiple cross-functional leadership teams across diverse industry projects simultaneously, which have impacted millions of customers. He held board membership across financial services entities, housing finance like asset management, life insurance, general insurance space, and fintech firms. He advises PE firms as part of their portfolio companies' advisory boards. He works with leadership teams in enabling transformation of organizations with complexities of talent culture conflict, generational change of promoters, key leadership, mergers and acquisition cultural issues, issues of business scales and size. He mentors next-gen family business professionals, startup founders, and coaches C-suite professionals. Based out of Mumbai, he is well-traveled. He travel globally and well-versed with global markets and global organization nuances. He writes weekly columns in the Indian business media on topical issues around convergence of policy, BFSI, economy, and entrepreneurship. Now let me have the privilege of introducing our director, Mr. G. Srinivasan. Sir joined the National Insurance Academy as director in December 2018 after superannuating from New India Insurance, where he was serving as CMD for more than 6 years. Prior to that, he was a CMD of South Base PSU, United India Insurance Company. He has more than 38 years of experience in general insurance industry, both in India and abroad, and is a very well-known name in the Indian financial sector. He is also the strongest serving CMD of public sector insurance companies. During his tenure as CMD in both the PSUs, he has taken these organizations to greater heights and has been conferred with number of national and international awards for his extraordinary achievements. Sir, with his rich experience and abundant knowledge, is always eager to share it with others through training sessions, webinars, and talks in insurance area. Sir is a commerce graduate from Madras University and an associate of Institute of Cost and Management Accountants of India, and also a fellow of Insurance Institute of India. With this, I request Sir to please take ahead the session, Sir. Over to you, Sir.
Yeah, thank you, Jayashree, for a nice introduction of all the panelists. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Dear friends, good afternoon to everyone. Let me extend a very hearty welcome to all the participants to this webinar. The theme is very, very interesting, very timely, which is deepening the insurance penetration, reimagining the value chain. I have great pleasure in welcoming the panelists, the very eminent panelists who have joined us for this webinar. Friends, before I talk a few words about the subject and take the panel forward, I just would like to say a few words about the National Insurance Academy. This academy was formed about 40 years back as an institution of eminence in the field of insurance, education, training, and research. Over the years, the institution has been really doing a phenomenal work in the insurance space. Every year, we train about 7,000 insurance professionals on various facets of insurance domain, technology, and management. We also, provide leadership, tunnel to the industry. Every year, we train about 100 students, graduates through our 2-year PGDM course. And these students are today occupying key positions in the insurance industry, not only in India, but also in many parts of the world like Singapore, US, and Middle East. We also do a lot of research on subjects related to insurance, which has been found to be useful by the industry as well as by the policymakers like the government and the regulator. So we are very pleased to bring this webinar, which is very, very relevant to the market. As Jayeshi was mentioning, penetration of insurance in India is relatively very low as compared to many other countries. Even countries which fall in the bracket of emerging economies have done fairly well in terms of insurance penetration. The Indian number is only 3.7 as against the global average of 6.09. The insurance density, which really refers to how much an Indian spends on insurance, India ranks very low. It's only about 74 US dollars as against a global average of 682 US dollars. If you look at health, homeowners and life, not only large number of people are still out of the insurance net, even those who are within the net are not adequately insured. If you look at an insurance like motor third party, which is mandatory as per law, there are still many vehicles plying on the Indian roads without insurance, exposing the pedestrians and others to the possibility of not being able to get any significant claim if an accident happens. If you look at natural catastrophes, India has been exposed to natural catastrophes in the last 7-8 years repeatedly. Every time a catastrophe hits India, the protection gap is almost 90%. What I mean by protection gap is the difference between the insured losses and the total economic losses. What it means is only 10% of the economic losses get covered by insurance. And we have seen in the recent pandemic, COVID, we have seen that, you can just compare the number of people who are getting infected and who die due to COVID and the number of people who are actually making claims under health insurance or under life insurance. One can see the, the difference, which clearly means that, there is so much to be done in terms of insurance penetration. But in the last 20 years, a lot of things have been done. There have been reforms. The regulator has development as an important part of their function. The insurance sector has grown phenomenally, but we still have a long way to go. For a country like India, insurance is very, very important for a few reasons. One is there is no social security net for most of the population, huge unorganized labor, large dependence on agriculture, and accidents, diseases can really push people below poverty line. So, the issue is very important. We have a long way to go, miles to go before we can call ourselves an adequately insured society. To discuss this, we have the eminent panel of, people from diverse fields. We have Mr. Kumar from LIC, the largest insurer, not only in India, even if you take a global space, LIC is a very, very big institution, which has played a very important role. Then we have Mr. Saurabh Mukherjee, who is from the financial space, who comes from a background of investments and financial instruments. We have Mr. Srinath, who's a columnist and also, who has played an important role in the financial services space. So with this small introduction, I will go into the panel as such. So I would like to start the first question to Mr. Kumar. We spoke about India being an uninsured society and penetration being very low. So I just would like to have your initial opening comments before we proceed further.
Yeah, I hope you can hear me. There
Yes.
seems to be some disturbance in the video part. At least you can hear me, right? Fine. Good afternoon, Mr. Srinivasan, and good afternoon, Mr. Saurabh and Mr. Sridharan and everyone else who's listening in. Yeah, relevantly opening remarks by Mr. Srinivasan. I believe that we have to think differently in India. When we look at penetration, density, obviously we are looking at many other things as well. So even though density wise we are hardly 1/6 of the US density, I think in India we need to believe that risk coverage, first and foremost, life insurance is important for everyone. And in that, government has tried to do something already. Most of you would be aware that Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, we could cover in a very short time about 7 but then that's not all. I think basically the knowledge of insurance, the awareness of insurance, and the need for insurance simply not being felt in spite of all the things that insurance industry has been doing. At least LIC has been doing from 1956. The entire insurance industry, including private sector, has been at it for the last 15 years. But we don't seem to have made much impact on those issues. Basically, we in a country like India, according to me, we should not be talking about density. We should be penetration and the protection gap. As you rightly said, I think for life insurance, the protection gap is hardly 92%, which means that even those who are insured are, for example, insured for only 8% of what they should be insured for. And I think again, this fact that when people look at financial products, they are not actually looking at life insurance as the basic, the first and the fund a financial product. Once people start insurance as the principal product that one should have in his basket before one gets any other, fixed deposits, mutual funds, equity, for example. I think then that awareness has to be brought in by the insurance players. Industry has been doing its bit. The regulator has also been doing its bit. We about a year back, we started a campaign of the lines of mutual funds sahi hai for the life insurance market, and by and large, it has started to seeing some kind of traction. To be done before we actually, get talking about, penetration and density in the kind of terms that Mr. I think I will rest for now. That is what I wanted to say.
Saurabh, I come to you. Mr. Kumar, explained what the industry has done over the years. What's the current situation? As somebody, who is, I would say, out of the insurance industry, you can always have the privilege of looking at the industry from a different perspective. Your views on the under-penetration aspect.
Thank you very much to NIA and to you, sir, for inviting me to this discussion. A very interesting discussion, privileged to be part of such a august panel. I think the problem of under-penetration is a more generic problem. It's not just specific to insurance. So if you see the RBI's data on this, the RBI has a fabulous study called the Household Finance Survey. It's on the website. It was a 2018 study. It's still available on the RBI website. Probably the best piece of work done in India's 70 years of independence on this subject. And what the RBI study shows is quite astonishing. It shows that 95% of India's household wealth is in physical assets. A mere 5% of our country's household wealth is in financial assets, and our financial assets are a mere $500 billion 70 years into independence, right? Now, the RBI euphemistically says, they can't obviously say this explicitly, the RBI euphemistically says that the reason we have this uniquely low penetration of financial products, no other economy remotely our size has such a low penetration of financial services products. The RBI euphemistically says that black money has played a significant role. Now, that's the RBI's euphemism. It's up to us to figure out why we have such a uniquely low amount of penetration. Now, the good news is last 5 years, the trends are very encouraging. So looking at IRDA data and looking at SEBI data, whether it's life insurance, whether it's general insurance, whether it's mutual fund policies, we're seeing around 17 to 18% per annum growth in all of these flows, right? So that's very encouraging. My reckoning is a big part of these flows are due to the fact that the interest on savings accounts and fixed deposits is now effectively negative. I mean, once you subtract inflation and taxes, anybody on this call or anybody out there who's saving money through fixed deposits and savings accounts is basically losing money. His wealth is diminishing by the passing year, and that's pushing people into insurance, into mutual funds, and over the recent 6 months into the stock market as well. So that is a force for propulsion into financial products, but we clearly have to do more. I think across the financial services industry in our country, there's a massive issue of trust, right? I sit on the SEBI Mutual Fund Advisory Committee. I sat on the committee which reconstituted SEBI's PMS rules last year. And I, as a person running a PMS company, I see this level of distrust in the financial services industry. Now, different parts of the financial services ecosystem have reacted differently to this trust deficit. What SEBI has done, and I think it deserves credit for this, is SEBI has tried to say that we are catering to the end customer. We are not catering to the intermediary. And over the last decade, there's been a range of rule changes by SEBI, which squeeze the intermediary share of the pie and champion the customer's interests. And I think one of the reasons the mutual fund industry has been able to do very well over the last several years is upfront commissions are gone. Increasingly, there are direct flows direct to the manufacturer without the intermediary being in question. If I look at the insurance industry from outside in, I think there are three big problems that the industry faces. I don't think the regulator or the manufacturer has figured out who they are catering to. Are they here to serve the intermediary, or are they here to serve the customer? Because there is a plethora of insurance products that even intelligent people like me find hard to fathom, let alone the average Joe on the street, right? The bulk of the insurance industry's profits come from products which look after the intermediaries' interests rather than the customers. And I think there has to be a real sort of soul searching by both the regulator and the manufacturers on who exactly are they trying to please here, the intermediary or the customer. I think the second confusion that the insurance industry faces is between protection and investment, right? What are we here to do? Are we doing protection or are we doing investment? And hence, as a result, the industry has a plethora of products which serve neither purpose fully, right? Barring the term life product, which I think is a high quality product sold by the Indian insurance industry, the bulk of the other products, I think, fall short on both protection and on investments. On the investment grounds, I think the industry produces woefully inadequate products. Products give suboptimal investment returns. And I think the third confusion that the insurance industry hasn't yet been able to quite get its head around is, how do we persuade the government of India? How do we persuade the government of India that we have to create a pensions market with tax relief? You can't sort of say that a country like ours, which doesn't have a social security net, as you said, Director Saab, rightly you said that, we don't have a social security net, but if we don't give people a tax break to create a pension construct, then how on earth will people ever save for retirement? Yes, we have the NPS, but the NPS is a very tightly specific product, and the NPS's fees have been crunched so low that there is no marketing of it. As a result, the NPS product hasn't taken off. So I think there is a kind of regulatory challenge in convincing the government of India for the insurance industry that please give us a tax break so that we can get the pensions industry going. The pensions industry should be the investment arm of the insurance industry, right? That's the way the pension protection market the world over has grown, by looking after people's long-term investment needs. The second dilemma is protection versus investments. I think that has to be disentangled. There are too many confused products out there which fall between the two stools. And the third leg of challenge for the insurance industry is around customer versus intermediary. Who are we trying to look after here?
Thank you, Saurabh. I go to Srinath. Srinath, you have been a commentator on the financial services space. You write very, very eloquently on many of the newspapers and magazines. I just would like to take a view from you on the issue of penetration. How do you look at it, and what is your view on how do we fix it?
Sure. Thank you for the invitation, and I think picking on what Mr. Kumar and Saurabh mentioned, I think it's about trust. If we look at the current India, we are multiple Indias. I break it as literate India as well as keypad literate India. I mean, you have a huge population which is keypad literate but is not literate. But if you look at any insurance form, it is so confusing. Sometimes I actually joke saying that we need a one-page term sheet to understand what the product is. Probably unless the regulator comes with a diktat saying that you have to give a specified template of one-page term sheet of what every product is defined, I don't think we will build trust. And also the other issue of products is I think we're confused between, are we catering to India or Bharat? And by converting products into campaigns is not going to take us too far. If we look at the way our regulators are formed, and if you step back, an average individual needs only 3 products, and I call it as LIP, LIP. He needs lending, investment, and protection. And in this, we'll have to simplify what is insurance all about. I'm a big believer that insurance is about protection, and I think the jury is still out. Some companies believe that they're for protection. Some companies believe they also do protection. I think sooner or later we'll have to solve that. And here I agree with Saurav. I think we'll have to simplify and stick to protection, because the only way we can build long-term trust is knowing what we do. The other one is very grandly that the sector has spoken about digital. And I think if we look at our regulators' website itself is so outdated. And I mean, where do we start? If we say that we are going to be digital, we will have to have a basic minimum capability across the sector, starting from the regulators and the companies. And this will also help, because if you tie it into the ombudsman program that IRDA has, it will take us to a long way. The other 2 points I see why penetration is stuck the last 10 years, despite the growth, is I think many of intermediaries and professionals who had side distribution businesses made more money than the actual investors lost capital. And I think with digital tools, I think supervision can be far more strenuous. If I look at, let's say, SEBI, the way SEBI tracks fund managers is far more rigorous than what we actually track in the insurance sector. So I think technology should play a role. In short, I think penetration would improve if we improve the talent in the industry. It has been a very, very inward-looking, incestuous talent. Almost we take great pride in saying we moved from Mumbai to Gurgaon to Hyderabad to Bangalore within the same 6 brands, all our careers. I think somewhere, if we want this sector to grow, let's look at it as a FMCG product with protection as the product and understanding risk as the pricing mechanism. I think that's another way of bringing in talent to this industry. I think this will be my few points that I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Srinath. I come to Mr. Kumar again. I mean, as somebody from the industry as well, one of the challenges we always faced is, do people understand insurance? Do they understand the difference between, protection and savings? And, for many years in India, insurance was always thought of as a kind of a savings product, and protection came much later. So, Mr. Kumar, my question to you is, how do we, sort out this problem of creating awareness, about the product and also about the need for insurance?
Yeah, picking up from what and Saurabh said, I totally agree with some of the points that they've raised. But then, as a guy was, being 35, 40, specifically with LIC, let me tell you, with a small story, let me start. I was a branch manager years ago, rural Tamil Nadu, and even those days, nothing much has changed since then. And we used to go, on these rounds to people, to meet agents, development officers, and customers. And sometimes agents would take me along to meet prospective customers whom I've been able to convince. Now, one such customer, and the agents, had ideas of making big promises. To this place in typical Tamil, they used to tell me that if we go to him, we'll get a very big policy, because that is what he wanted to do, sell a big policy. And once I remember going to one of these thatched houses in interior Tamil Nadu, where the customer had already been told that he would have to give the branch manager a premium of at least 10,000 rupees. This was, believe me, I'm talking about 1991. Now, for an insurance guy like me, I look at, is he insurable or not based on his age. Now, the guy I got to see was probably 70, 75 years old. And so, telling the agent aside that, where have you brought me? How can we give insurance to this man? But then he said, sir, I have explained to him about our annuity policy. He's prepared to give. And believe me, he gave me 10,000 rupees because he said that I heard that you people invest, in irrigation, you invest in power, we get light in our villages and things like that. I was amazed that we had got to this guy in that village, you know. But then his house, he was 75 years old. He probably had children. If 45, they had children aged 10, 15, 20. Nobody had insurance. So this trust that all of you were talking about, the need for, you know, actually selling insurance, term insurance, protection, basically, is something that we've been trying to do all these years. But then in India, people ask, kitna milega? Sorry to say this, but there's an old ad, I don't want to mention the name. It's about, you know, a car or a motorcycle, mileage. What mileage when I get? What returns am I going to get is what they are. So the agent conveniently will tell him that you're going to get back so much money and sell him not a term product, but an endowment product. So awareness building is going to take some doing, and I'm talking about the rural pockets basically. In urban, even in urban areas, I come across customers even today who I tell them to take unit-linked policy. He says that's risky. You tell me an endowment product which will give me good returns, and we are still there. And you know the pity, and that is what I fight every day among my 12 lakh agents. Believe me, I do that. But then we will away. And I like what Saurav said about pension. We are selling a lot of pensions, and I believe that we must give tax breaks. And I am finance ministry as well. Look at some private sector fellow who has earned all his life, paid tax all his life. Buying an annuity, he again has to pay tax on the annuity. So this is something that we need to work on the annuity portion of it. Protection term is something that we are pushing a lot these days. We need to ensure, in fact, LIC has one of the lowest premiums. You can check out. But I say that in the Life Insurance Council, we have regular meetings. We talk about, as I said sometime back, we are talking about why life insurance is important. We are coming out with a lot of campaigns about it, all media, and we'll continue to do that. I think government also will have to sort of, as Srinivasan rightly said, some of the emerging economies have done better than India in insurance space. Yeah, over to you, Mr. Srinivasan.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mr. Kumar. I come to Saurabh for, I mean, this is something I picked up from what you said, you know, the question of trust deficit. Of course, I mean, I didn't realize that it is there in all financial products, but in insurance, we always say that, you know, we promise the moon when we give an insurance, and then, you know, when a claim happens, there are always fine prints. So can you talk a little bit about, with your experience in the other financial services space, about trust deficit? How do you sort it out? Saurabh, are you there?
I can hear you, sir. I missed the full question. I missed your question.
It's basically about the trust deficit in the insurance space.
I can hear you, but I missed the full question. Would you mind repeating the last couple of sentences?
The question is basically about the trust deficit in the insurance space. While you said that it is there in other financial services as well, I mean, somehow I got a feeling that is it more in insurance, which is probably standing in the way of insurance penetration.
I think it's a common issue across financial services. You only have to look at the debacles we've had in the mutual fund industry as well. Where I think insurance has a deeper problem is the transparency issues. So, for example, if I buy a ULIP, it's not clear to me what sits inside the ULIP, right? So including, I think if the regulator can push for higher disclosure on what sits inside the policy, what's sitting inside the ULIP, right? So at least in a mutual fund, whatever be the issues with mutual funds, you can see what's sitting inside a mutual fund. It's mandatory disclosure. Similarly, I think the opacity on policy terms and conditions, right? So if you look at medical health cover, even affluent people, right? People in your and my social strata, you'll find that 50% of people in your and my social strata don't have medical health cover. You'll find half of Indians have not bought motor insurance, right? So even on basic insurance, health cover, motor cover, why do we have less than 50% coverage? Because there's a great deal of opacity around terms and conditions. So I'll give you, this is one of the reasons I got rid of my health cover. If you buy, there are several Indian health insurance providers, medical cover providers, who have sub limits as to given underneath your overall coverage, how much they will pay for an hospital bed, how much will be medicines, how much will be various tests, right? Most people who buy medical cover have no idea about these sub limits, right? And over time, a lot of people have become very wary of the fine print contained in motor insurance or health insurance. I'm talking deliberately talking about more straightforward insurance products, not going into stuff like endowments and so on. So I think the regulator can do plenty in India, the insurance regulator, to push for disclosure of what sits inside insurance policies, especially those which have an investment component. And secondly, push for far greater disclosure on the terms and conditions. That would go some way towards mitigating the trust issues. The trust issues are common to other packaged financial products in our country, including mutual funds. But where I've seen SEBI have success is wherever SEBI has pushed for greater transparency and pushed for greater disclosure, it has improved trust. And I think IRDA perhaps could look at some of those areas, because otherwise it is perplexing. Why do affluent people, why do 50% of Indians, more than 50% of Indians not have health cover? And why do the majority of Indians not have motor insurance?
Yeah, thank you, Saurabh.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir. I think Saurabh sir, your video is switched off, and Kumar sir. So I request Saurabh to switch on the video, because it is a panel discussion. We are displaying all the panel members on.
I understand. It's just that I think the bandwidth is getting clogged up, and
Yeah,
exactly. At my end, I'm not getting to hear what others are saying if the video is displayed.
Okay.
Fine. Srinath, I come to you. When do we call ourselves as a fully insured society? I mean, if somebody has adequate life insurance, health insurance, probably pension, homeowners. So what would you suggest to Indians in terms of building financial security? I mean, what should be the approach towards this? Because there seems to be a lot of, when Saurabh was talking about intermediary driven insurance. So what would you suggest to an ordinary person in terms of his insurance coverage?
So I think the buzzword in this entire thing is simplify. Simplify the product so that the consumer understands what they're buying into. A lot of financial services consumers are in awe of super swanky products or super swanky branches. Most of the relationship managers who sell the product, and I'm sorry to use the word sell, ideally we should be advising them what is good for them. But unfortunately, that doesn't really make business sense all the time, right? Because we always calculate what is the commission and what is the premium that they can make out of it. So I think in some of those aspects, we will have to simplify the product. And number two, I think transparently, can we say out of every 100 rupees of premium, what goes to the insurance company, what gets paid to the distributor, dealer, channel, not only this year, what is the trail commission? Some of those we will have to simplify. And I think this frenzy that the banca partnership, the bank as a distribution network has, you will actually see February and March amount of insurance products that get sold as good for you. May not be good for you, it's good for the balance sheet of those banks, because it is the other income. Some of these I think are known across the industry. It's just that I think we just need to wake up. When I say we, I'm talking about the regulation and the supervision, to say that can we stop some of these mis-selling? And I think we must be very pragmatic. Most of the, I think, bad financial decisions for their own personal finance is made by professionals in the finance industry. While they sell for others, they just don't plan for themselves. It is very, very bad. I think we will have to start with financial literacy, probably from school level. We'll have to start educating our next generation. What is finance? What is financial literacy? What is personal finance? If we get that right over the next 10 years of teaching our youngsters, I think some of these concepts of mis-selling won't have a chance even if they try to. I think we definitely have to do it because 60% of our Indians are millennials and Generation Z, which means if you're going to going forward, 700 million Indians, irrespective of where they live in the country, are going to be young. We have a huge, I think, responsibility to get it right. And I think that will start from literacy. So I would encourage any campaign the industry runs to start probably from the school level, not even the college level, because a lot of kids in rural parts drop out after primary school. So we had to catch them at the primary, secondary level, not even at the tertiary level.
Right. Thank you, Srinath. I go to Mr. Kumar.
Sir, I have follow up
please.
on what Mrs. Sridharan said. I'd just like to respond to that.
Yeah.
Very interestingly, Mrs. Sridharan, in the late 80s, there was subject of insurance taught in CBSE +2. And I don't know how many of you know that. And LIC had in fact recruited people passing out those 2-3 years who did insurance as a subject of the clerical cadre. Mr. Srinivasan may remember this was done. And even recently, maybe few years back, we did try and run a campaign in colleges, maybe not schools, for financial literacy, starting with insurance. And this is something that we are very deeply interested in doing. And we will like to continue to do that kind of thing. And I totally agree with you, but that needs to be done. Yeah, over to you, Mr. Srinivasan.
Yeah, Mr. Kumar, in fact, I agree with you. In fact, we had at most 4 or 5 batches of those youngsters who had finished their 10th standard doing insurance. In fact, I would say I'm not sure of the life insurance industry. The general insurance industry, these people are today, doing a phenomenal job, and they're really the insurance talent people in many companies at this point of time. Mr. Kumar, I'll come back to you again, on this question of intermediaries. I think this is something, has been raised by other speakers as well. There is a sense that there is a little bit of lack of professionalism among the agents and brokers. Of course, you also mentioned, selling becomes very critical, lack of transparency. How do we increase the professionalism among the agents and intermediaries? Because that's very important if, trust has to increase on insurance.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Mr. Srinivasan and others who have spoken about this. But typically what happens is that when we're looking for people to sell insurance products, very difficult to come by, people who are really interested in doing only insurance selling. They probably do a bunch of other things along with that, number one. And number two, many of them are there for sort of a temporary kind of a structure, and they're looking out to do something better, get a better job and things like that. So what we typically do is we just watch these people for the first 1 or 2 years. And when we're sure that, this person is interested in, insurance selling as a career, then we give them a lot of inputs about how to do the not selling, as Mrs. Sridharan rightly said, advising people on what kind of product is important for them, and starting off with term assurance kind of product. And then in case the customer asks, no, as I said before, I want some return out of it, like I want market related return, or I want very safe kind of return. Depending on that, we advise the agents to advise the customers to go ahead. This is something, but it will take still a lot of time. I believe and I accept that there's a lot of trust deficit in the market. People do not believe, and basically let us understand that the person who's buying the insurance policy, even with a lot of trust, in case there is a deficit, he's not going to be around to see that happen. It's the family that is going to see that. And this is something that we constantly tell people that, look, don't think you're trying to, do something by selling a big policy to some person. If he dies and we are going to sell the insurance money to the family, if I settle it, fine, that there's no trust deficit. If I don't settle for some reason, there's going to be an issue. And that is why I think coming around to what Mr. Sridharan said earlier about the forms and the complexity in filling out those forms, I totally agree with you, Mr. Sridharan, but then sometimes regulatory issues force us to, and because people are questioned, tomorrow the agent will be questioned if something goes wrong. And therefore, even if you don't want some information, he tries to get that information and puts it down on the paper. So we will have to simplify. I like that what you said about simplifying the product, and simplifying the product means simplifying everything about the product, starting from what you ask the customer to disclose. And therefore, we also need to disclose everything, like Saurav said, about what is there inside the policy wallet or inside the policy. But then that is something that would take some time, but we are working on it. And I think with the help of the regulator, we can do a lot more work on this.
Saurabh, are you there? Jayashree can find out. I think Saurabh seems to have...
It's a bandwidth issue. I think I'm also,
Yeah.
Some problem, yeah.
So, Jayashree, you can find out. In the meantime, I'll go to Srinath.
Yes, sir, sure.
Srinath, can you, so we were, continuing with the problem of trust deficit. One of the issues, of course, which people generally have problem is about claims, especially in the non-life space. Maybe life is slightly better because it's little less complex, whereas in non-life, especially health, as Saurav was mentioning. What should we really do to improve the claim settlement process? How do you make it simpler?
So I think as a market, as a nation, we must admit that as consumers, we are very poor in knowing what are our consumer rights. And we like to blame that lack of knowledge on the brands that we work with. So if I have to claim with something from the insurance company, I will blame the insurance company that they did not give. I think one way for the industry that we can simplify is again saying what is included and what is excluded. I think we'll have to bring it to such a simple configuration. A very classic cultural trait that you will find in the Southeast Asian languages and presentations is they use everything almost on an A4 paper and bullet points of what's in and what's out. It's very, very clear to the customer. This is what you get. This is, and anything out of this is what you don't get. So if it's like a car insurance and the engine is allowed, engine replacement is allowed, whereas plastic is not allowed. Let's call it out, saying plastic is not allowed, mirror is not allowed, brakes are allowed, this is not allowed. I think we'll have to list it to make it simple, so that the same fear about is the intermediary or the investigator who's going to check on that car, the surveyor, is there a doubt, or is there a scope for, let's say, manipulating the survey report? And I think we can simplify all that all over again. Simplify of what's in and what's not. Saurav mentioned the same point about health insurance. It is so complicated. Sometimes your blood pressure increases by reading what's included and what's not included in filling a form. And nowadays with digital, we also have these issues. I think somebody would have read, say, in a Harvard presentation saying you must be omni-channel. And it doesn't mean that you have to force the customer to be omni-channel. The customer has a right to choose whether they want to walk into a branch, talk to somebody, call a call center, or use digital medium. Here, I must commend Mr. Kumar. I think most Indians, all of us, when we grew up, would have at least one LIC product to our name, if not more. And as one such Indian, enough LIC products since from childhood. But the way your organization has grown to omni-channel towards and adopting digital is phenomenal. I don't need to visit a branch. I just need to scan something or send something. There's a reply coming in. I wish a lot of the younger insurance companies in the private sector adopt such a let's say, digitization method that you can still be a legacy company, but be very, very fast in transformation. And I think that's the biggest complication the industry faces. We have our own myths and challenges saying, this is what we did last 10 years. This is what we did last 20 years. We will have to reinvent what today's customer wants. Just one word about banking comparison. I don't think many young Indians have walked into a branch or even a post office for many, many years. And if we look at insurance sector as well and say, what can we do to sell an insurance product or to give comfort to similar customer? I think we will solve it using digital. And the conventional digital lending space, as we see on the e-commerce and the fintech platform, they're actually using the consumer's digital footprint to actually create products that they need and to serve them when they want it. I think insurance is something that we will have to create some similar stories of what those consumers are and what they want. And here only one example on the car insurance. Can we make it a sachet product? Let's assume all of us have a car and the same model, bought on the same day, bought at the same variant, we have the same premium. But what if I use it for 10,000 kilometers a year and you use it only for 1,000 kilometers a year? And what if your usage is only within the city, whereas mine could be cross country? I think our products, the risk premium for the subsequent year must be different. But yet again, conventionally, we charge the same premium. And I think some of those things we'll have to change to modern times. We will be able to get to sachet and to dynamic pricing. Thank you.
Mr. Kumar, I come to you. I think Saurabh has some connectivity issues, so he will join us when things improve. Mr. Kumar, the question is, see, one of the challenges in the insurance space, where it's life and non-life, is dispute resolution. When somebody has a problem, of course, today he has the ability of going to ombudsman. Of course, in the non-life space, if it is a corporate, they do have problems of going to ombudsman. So is there a way where we can come out with an dispute resolution wherein, you know, there is an independent body which gives a decision if a claim is payable or not, how much is payable? Of course, this could be more applicable on the non-life space rather than the life space. Do you think that's a solution for the insurance sector to make people, you know, develop a kind of confidence on the industry?
All right, Mr. Srinivasan, yes, I get your point. In fact, dispute resolution is very important. But then taking a point from what Mr. Srinath said about sachet, maybe once you do that, it becomes easier to resolve the dispute, because then there are the same car, the same year, used by two different people in two different ways. How you're using the product for which you're insuring yourself is also important. And it typically, for life insurance, let me say that two people taking an insurance policy on the same day, 20-year-old, both equally healthy, all good. Then one of them, has a smoking habit, a drinking habit, and so many other issues. And then the other person doesn't. I mean, similar to what Mr. Srinath said. So it has to be taken differently. But then we have a system in LIC which has been working well for us. So if a claim is not going to be paid for a reason which is given in the policy document, and we repudiate the claim, we write to the customer that you can, contest this by writing to our zonal office or the corporate office. So at the zonal office and corporate office, there is a team, a committee, which is headed by a retired High Court judge. So we do that because he understands law, he understands the policy, he understands the wordings which probably the customer has not understood. He will go through that. He will also decide whether the insurance company has acted correctly or incorrectly in the matter, and then the committee will give a decision. Only after that do we write to the customer that he can approach an ombudsman. So we have a dispute resolution methodology in place within the organization, and let me tell you that many a time we are able to resolve the disputes correctly to the advantage of the customer or otherwise, and then the customer also feels that yes, justice has been done. And this is how we are doing it. But I believe a more robust mechanism can be created across the ombudsman area or by the regulator, maybe taking more such examples, more such retired judges. Maybe we can set up a team which can go into it and then come out with some kind of a system that will be a balanced, take a balanced view, both from the customer's point of view and from the insurer's point of view.
Yeah. Srinath, I come to you on this same question of, resolution of disputes. Do you have any ideas? How can we make it? Mr. Kumar has given a very elaborate answer on this, but do you have any new ideas on that?
Sure. Just building on what Mr. Kumar said, I think it's a very, very fair practice and also practiced across some of the other countries and also in the NBFC space. One of the idea which is lowering the cost and the time it takes to solve it, and which is also legally the verdict, final verdict of the whether the mediator is legally executable, is the concept of online dispute resolution platforms. So if there is a ODR platform white labeled for the industry and with sets of balances and rules given, and we train the mediators and we onboard them, the fact is it can be almost a randomly assigned mediator where we can avoid any of the nepotism claims that the consumer might later have. And as an industry, we can actually put a self-governing rule saying this is almost like the online platform where anybody who complains is assigned a simple link. On a WhatsApp video call, you actually get in. You can just send your files on WhatsApp, take a picture and send. It's already there. These mechanisms, these platforms are already there. In fact, Niti Aayog last week came with a concept paper note on how to promote the concept of ODRs. So this is something that I would encourage the industry and the industry regulators to look at.
Okay. Mr. Kumar, I come to you with this. This is about regulations, just getting into regulatory space. Do you think anything? Are there too many regulations? Anything can be done to make regulations much more positive? You have any views on that?
Yes, Mr. Srinivas. I think basically regulations, if I may say so, are generally in emerging markets are borrowed from other countries and they build on that, keeping in view the local conditions. And to that extent, I think slowly the IRDAI and our regulator has been evolving over the years. There are mistakes made at the regulatory level also, and these are being corrected by bringing about newer regulations or validating those regulations again. But then I don't think there are at any time we can feel that there are too many regulations, because regulations are important to ensure that the market participants behave correctly and the customers get their due. But then I think, like Mr. Srinath was saying, even regulations have to be simplified. Even the customer should be able to understand what the regulation means for him and what it means for the insurer. And therefore, if the regulatory process is simple, if the regulations are simple in nature and everyone can understand and follow them, and I believe that can really help insurance companies also going forward and making things better for the customers.
Yeah, Srinath, I come to you on the question of regulations. I know I have seen some of your articles on the regulatory space. So what do you think of the regulation? Should it be as it is today? Do you think something needs to be done to promote insurance in our country? Do you have any views?
Sure. I think as Mr. Kumar said, most of our regulations, as any new industry evolves, is borrowed from developed markets. And I sometimes sarcastically say that sometimes we copy it while we attend a conference hosted by a hedge fund manager. We will have to simplify regulations to protect our consumers. And in India, with so much of disparity of income, we will always go for what I call the lowest common denominator. It will sound socialist in terms of policy, but let's face it, every investor in the insurance sector or any other financial sector is a capitalist. They are putting money to get returns on it, which means we also have to be fair to the investor. Unfortunately, in India, the feeling that investors get is it is consumers versus investors. It cannot be so. The reality is without investors putting in that patient long-term capital, especially like the insurance sector, the sector won't be around at all. But definitely, I feel the supervision and especially digitally led supervision has to scale, has to improve. We can do, I think, for a country which prides itself as supplying thought leadership or IT and tech solutions to the world, I think our industry should showcase more regulations which welcome digital platforms, which welcome digital ideas. Because now we have the Jan Dhan, the entire trinity of Jan Dhan, Aadhaar and mobile. So why cannot insurance grow faster using on the same concept? It's almost like if we say that anybody who has an Aadhaar card is given a universal insurance, and that's a concept which we have certain schemes also. Why not scale it faster? Two, I think the more we have supervision is what we will increase confidence in regulation. Today, I think supervision is okay, but we can do far better, far proactively. And I don't know whether it's a touchy sentiment. And to your point about a couple of my articles, I've always maintained if we have to borrow a leaf from other regulators in developing nations also, we will have to encourage people to move laterally from the industry, private sector into regulators' office, and to welcome people from regulators into the industry. And it almost sounds like a very touchy topic. Unless we do that, we are not going to have cross-pollination of ideas at all. It cannot be like us versus them. It is not that. We are all in it together. If the industry grows, all of us grow. But unfortunately, it sees as us versus them. It is almost like the old retail style where it's a sari shop that as a customer you stand before a desk and somebody shows you sari on the other side. That can change with modern times.
Okay, thank you, Srinath. Let me move to the next area, which is insurance sector reforms. I go to Mr. Kumar on this. Insurance sector has seen a lot of reforms over the years. I mean, the industry was opened up 20 years back, and then FDI, which was initially 26, moved up to 49. Then some of the insurance companies, public sector companies, were diluted, listed. Mr. Kumar, I think what is the next on the insurance reforms?
Okay, big bang reform is LIC IPO straight away. So I know all of you are looking at that. But then, yes, I agree that insurance reforms have to happen. It's the more the players, the greater the penetration always, and it will help. And that more capital is available, which is always welcome. And it's a matter that government has to decide. But insurance, specifically life insurance, again, primarily is a push product even today. And but talking about the earlier interaction that you had about regulators, and maybe like Mr. Srinath said, it's not us against them. So now when we have a product which combines various things in it, it has life insurance, it has a mutual fund like unit linked insurance product, whether multiple regulators have a role to play in that is also a question to be addressed. And therefore, I think that going forward, competing with other products in the market, insurance, deposits, mutual fund, physical assets, real estate, gold, etc. So it all has to come together as someday, and therefore it is better that we have changes coming in. Maybe unification of the regulation or a regulator is also something that can be broadly thought of sometime in the distant future, and I believe there is room for that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Srinath. I think your views on this, on the insurance sector reforms.
Sure. I think very similar to Mr. Kumar, probably more vociferous. We will have to probably dust from FSLRC concept. I mean, we spoke about it at much length many years ago, unified regulation, how do we develop the market? And we also heard pushback, right? I mean, regulation is not equivalent to development, or it's almost seems like an antithesis to development. That mindset has to change. Regulation is for the development, it is for the consumers. And one of the challenges that I want to point out, as you asked about the Big Bang reform, is this worry that we will always have. As more and more domestic capital dries up, probably in the short term, we can blame COVID for it. The reality is, if foreign capital is going to take ownership of the insurance sector, how comfortable are we in the long term? And that's, I think, in the policy domain of the parliament to decide on. Are we comfortable with foreign capital owning most of it? I mean, today, some of the companies in the sector are available almost for free or for a song. And if we are going to allow, let's say, an increased FDI limit, how do we control it? How do we actually influence growth in that sector? I think, but we don't have an right answer to it, because as we want to be a global player, we will have to allow foreign capital to come in. Probably we should aim for a reciprocal arrangement. Just like if a certain player from a certain country is allowed rights here, does an Indian investor, can you go to that country? And sometimes in banking, you see it is not so. It's been very, very unfair. India is an interesting market for consumer market. Let's realize it. There are two aspects. One is, are we an investment destination or are we a consumer market that they are interested in? And I think that's what we have to be clear. We sometimes confuse the two. Just because we have billion Indians, insurable Indians, we think that we are an attractive investment destination. And I think a lot of it will depend on the taxation, the legality, ease of doing business, ease of actually entering the country and ease of exiting the country as well. I mean, for an investor, he needs to have the ability to take some money out. And that becomes an important, I think, clarification would be needed from the government.
Yeah, I think this question I'll go to Mr. Kumar. I think you raised the important point about whether the regulator should be for separate sectors or should there be a unified regulator as it being practiced in some of the markets, which can take care of the gaps in the regulation. Mr. Kumar, your views on this? Is there a scope for unified regulator or is the current system is fine?
So there is, as I said, in the future, there is space for a unified regulator. But before we think of that, I think we have to mature. I mean, each of these regulators, we need to get a sense of, a mature kind of market, first of all, a mature regulator in the market. And then when a regulator feels, whichever be the regulator, that all that I wanted to do has been done, probably then the next stage of, the unification of regulation can happen. But until then, I think we have a long road to, really traverse before we can think of that.
Okay. Mr. Srinath, you have any views on this, on the unified regulation?
I mirror it. And I think from the outside in perspective, for somebody who comments on the industry, there definitely is a hierarchy even amongst the financial regulators. I mean, let's accept it. We may not take names to name the hierarchy, but there definitely seems to be an hierarchy. So unless that hierarchy equals out and everybody is seen as equal in size and stature and position and their effective role, we cannot really speak about unifying. I think we don't want another turf war in the sector. I mean, that's a reality. I mean, we have enough, I think, issues that we can concentrate on in developing the market and not worry about turf wars. So I think we will have to mature more as an industry. If let's say we get to a 25% penetration in insurance, I think we are somewhere there to have a conversation about unified regulation.
Yes. Thank you, Srinath. I come to Mr. Kumar on this. Of course, this is a question which comes from the audience as well. What is the role of public sector in insurance? I mean, public sector has played a very important role over the years, and LIC is a classic case of how a public sector company could really play an important role. Going forward with so much competition around, how do you look at the role of public sector in insurance?
Yes, public sector can do a lot more, Mr. Srinivasan, and I think I can say this with some kind of confidence that LIC has been doing it. And compared to other markets and other countries, I think this is one organization which has stood firm and in terms of market share, even after so many years opening up of the market. And that is thanks to my seniors and people before me who have, played their role in ensuring that LIC is not just another PSU, that it can, manage, capitalize on the changes that are happening. And many years back, in fact, just to share with those who are listening and someone who was asked this question, that in the 70s, there were only two mainframe systems in India, in Asia, and one of them was in LIC Mumbai, Yogakshema. So that is how early we started about computerization and things like that. So therefore, I think we have been at the forefront of these activities. I would like to see that we continue to be so. Going back to, just to add to what Mr. Sridharan said about the JAM Trinity, he talked about it. In fact, the first time it was tested was with the Pradhan Mantri PMJDY, Jan Dhan Yojana. That is when, we bank accounts were opened, almost 22-23 crore accounts were opened, and LIC was asked to provide insurance cover at the rate of 30,000 for each of those accounts opened. And that is where we also discovered as an organization that just with JAM, that we could do so much more. And we have been trying to ensure that our systems take into account those changes that are happening in the market. Deep rural also, we have people with smartphones who are able to use their mobile. They have Aadhaar numbers, and we are able to reach out to all of them. And I think that PSU should not be seen in isolation. PSU is as good as anybody else in the market today. And I believe that PSU will continue to do well, LIC will continue to do well.
Srinath, I come to you. This is a question from the audience. Insurance sector is growing and there is need for talent. What is the role of academic institutions in playing a very important role in providing resource to the growing insurance industry? Because there is a feeling that the current generation doesn't look at insurance as a career.
So I think two ways I would address it as somebody who's also involved with a group of education institutions as a trustee, is this point. The industry always keeps saying that we wish academicians are far evolved and we wish academics provides us with better skilled staff. And if you actually turn around that question and ask those corporates, how many of them actually go back to school to, even as a visiting faculty, to volunteer time to teach? And yet they expect the colleges and universities to come back with on the platter ready staff. And I think this is something that the industry has to wake up. If you can go and do training for your staff once in a month, why can't you spend once a quarter? Just spend 3 hours in a college. And I think with COVID times, we've all learned this digital, you can even deliver a lecture digitally. So to that extent, colleges are also to be blamed. Just like we have almost glamorized education with giving them the hope that you finish a master's or an undergrad, you are going to be placed. And if I were sitting in their shoes, I'm going to tell them that life is difficult. There are, just like we have about 1 million engineers who graduate out, we probably have about 12 million students who graduate out every year across various streams. And if you're going to compete for those 6,000, 7,000 jobs in your city, you're competing with all of them. What is it that you're going to do different? And the challenge there is it's not only insurance selling. I think any selling, sales as a word has been almost been abused and beaten up last many years. We'll have to overcome that, what I call dignity of labor concept. Sales is not a bad thing. End of the day, each human being sells something. They sell their concept, their idea, even in a job interview. They're selling themselves, their candidature. We forget that just like marketing and branding seems exotic, strategy seems exotic, and sales is all the way down. We will have to, I think, break that myth and say that sales is a profession. We will have to give dignity. If I look at, let's say, the LIC, the agent, every agent I remember from childhood has a very, very, I think has that dignity saying, I'm an LIC agent. Can you make them proud? I think the industry has to work on that, and the academicians have to work with industries and let's say NIA. Why can't they white label products? They don't need to create content and pedagogy all the way. They can just simply work with NIA. It can be a co-branded product for the academicians. That will be my idea to fast track it.
Mr. Kumar, would you like to add to that? Because
I totally agree with what Sridharanji is saying, that we must spend time in colleges. We must go back to and try to teach people. And I'm happy that he believes that LIC agents have some kind of pride in them. We keep talking to them about this, that what you're doing is immensely, important to the public at large. And we keep telling them that what you earn is nothing compared to what you're giving back to them. So kindly ensure that you do that all the time. But then, yes, educational institutions can do a lot more. Sometime back, we were talking about how many years back CBSE and they had courses for insurance. I think we should try to find out whether government can reintroduce those kind of, at least not only insurance, but the entire financial literacy kind of space in spite of whatever, the kind of the course the candidate is pursuing. He could be a science, he could be doing engineering, but then financial literacy has to be there as a regular in whatever stream you're pursuing. Once we start doing that, I think a lot more can be got out of the system, and so that when people come out of college, be it IIT or be it anything else, they also have some sense of what they should know about finance and economy. So these are something that people probably passing out of IITs, and unless they get into a really finance kind of a institution, they will never get to know. But once we start doing that, then people as they grow up and start working will not have to be fooled by anybody. They will know what is a life insurance. They will know what is a mutual fund. They will know everything. I think we need to do that.
Mr. Kumar, I think I come back to the next question to you as well. This is about technology. This is again a question which has come from the audience. There's a feeling that insurance sector has to do more in terms of absorption of technology. There's a feeling that maybe we are still not as technology savvy as perhaps the banking sector is. Is the insurance sector in the right direction? Or do you think so? I mean, all the companies.
We need a lot more to be done. I totally accept that. We need to fast forward many things that we are planning to do, because by the time we think of doing something, we find that a new technology is already coming. So I think when we look at AI or those kind of things, or blockchain, that is an area where we have not really got into. And the faster we get into it, the better. We are working on it. I think some of the private insurance companies have started collaborating with insurtech companies, finance tech, fintech companies, and we at LIC are also finding out whether we can get into that space. We need to do that to ensure that we give better value to our customers in the long run. And I believe that, as I said, many years back we started, but then we are falling back a bit, and we need to gather pace and to be with the current crop of the youngsters and the way they think and the way they want to do things, the way they want to purchase financial products. In order to be there, I think we need to do a little more.
Right. Mr. Srinath, I mean, as somebody who's from the outside the industry, I mean, maybe as a customer, what would you like the industry to do on technology space?
I think COVID has taught us one thing. It is no more the question of do we go digital. I think digital first is a reality and a mantra that everybody is speaking about. Faster the industry adopts it, the better. And I'm saying it with one word of caution. The younger customers do not relate to any of our traditional channels at all, be it in urban cities or semi-urban towns. That's a reality. There was a survey conducted by a think tank about 3 years ago in India, and it was basically to understand the 7 crore Indians, the youngsters who were born the Generation Z, as we call them, who voted for the first time in the previous federal election. Very interestingly, about over 99% of them who polled did not know what www meant, because they have grown up with almost Facebook as an app, Instagram as an app, Hotmail as an app. Hotmail doesn't exist, Gmail as an app, whereas all of us know conventionally that we would go to what we call as the URL. So that shows how outdated we are compared to the younger Generation Z customers. And for them, if we are not digital, I call those organizations as digital dinosaurs. They will go extinct. So, and I'm a believer that in the next 5 to 10 years, the way India and Bharat adopts digital will be with a vengeance. And then the challenge for organization is how soon can you go digital only? I mean, this goes back to the intermediation that Saurabh spoke about. It could be in 2030, but 70% of all our businesses could be digital only. And that's a challenge for the industry, because we are still thinking traditional products, traditional channels for regulation and for supervision, whereas the actual end consumer or the potential consumer is speaking a different lingo completely. I mean, it'll be interesting if we actually ran pre-ad testing of the ads that the insurance industry creates to test it with the younger consumer, whether they understand whether it's even an insurance product. And my bet will be that they may not.
Yeah. So I think actually come to the end of the webinar. I would just seek some closing comments from both of you. Unfortunately, Saurabh could not join back because of the bandwidth issues. Mr. Kumar, I start with you. Your closing comments. How do we really make India a fully insured society? Maybe in the next 5 years or 10 years. I don't know. 5 years is too short a period.
As I said, I mean, if you recall, we were there at the C.D. Deshmukh seminar, just before the lockdown happened, and we were talking about the 5 trillion, contribution and what the life insurance can do. And I did say that the life insurance should be able to give 1 trillion. But for a moment, let's forget that. And what Mr. Sridharan said about, what the youngsters are thinking about. I mean, now, if you think of anything, you don't ask your mother or your father, you only Google it. So Google tells you everything. So that being the case, we must probably go backwards now, talk to the youngster, what do they want, and develop everything around that. And maybe if we start doing that, and then we will be able to develop entire financial products around what the youngster is thinking today. And sometime back, we were talking about unification of regulation and regulator. I mean, before all that happens, I think a unification of product, the financial product, can also happen. And that is the way forward, I believe, because the youngster is he doesn't have the time to, find out first about insurance, then about the deposit, then about mutual fund, vagera, vagera. He would like to get everything on just like that. And about a couple of weeks back, I was telling my daughter, what do you want to do with, because she started earning recently. Then what does she want to do? She said, I don't want to do anything. So, and she said, I know what to do when the time comes. So it's very difficult to really understand. I mean, I'm trying to learn what I need to do for the youngster in the market at home, literally, because many a time we're working from home and we get to know more from them rather than anyone else. I think going forward, there's a lot to be done in the insurance market. There are certain areas where we are behind the rest. We are behind the curve in some of the areas, and we need to do that. We need to bring into focus, a sharp focus, with the consumer needs and the customer's needs and what he's looking at. And also in a regulatory environment, how regulations can change and how we can provide inputs to the regulator that this is the need of the hour and this is what the customer needs today and this is what needs to be done. A lot of work has to be done around of that. And I think that work has already started. And Mr. Srinivasan, you're aware that we are also jointly on committees and regulator is asking us to look at whether, health insurance can be sold. So just for Mr. Sridharan's this one, that can health insurance be sold by life insurance companies? So the non-life insurance companies say then allow us to sell life insurance as well. So that is how things are evolving. And I hope it evolves fast so that the end customer gains a lot. Thank you very much.
Right. Mr. Srinath, your closing comments on the subject.
Sure. I think just to add on what Mr. Kumar said, I mean, I completely second it. Just to give a perspective on the gig economy, 23% of global gig economy workers are already in India, which means that these are people who don't have a steady source of income on a daily basis. Gone are the days when somebody worked in the same organization for 30 years. Now they even jump every few months. And the youngsters are also ready to work for what I call passion and also do something for compassion, which means they will work on a project for 1 year and take a year off. So in such a scenario, the great Indian risk is something that I think I would encourage all of us to work as in the industry. The risk is this: 2035, we are going to grow as an average age a little older as a society, as India. The interest rate that you're seeing has been dropping, and we're also living longer as humanity. How do we actually make money work for the citizens? I mean, if I know they're also retiring earlier or forced to retire earlier, the way economies and entrepreneurship is panning out. And that's a challenge I think insurance to face of how do we tackle that? And that's what I want to leave that with.
Yeah, Saurabh, I think you are back. So I'm going
to. That's many apologies to everybody on the panel and to you, to the NIA. Really, so I called my IT help desk to finally figure it out. My Microsoft Teams collapsed. Really sorry very much. No, how can I be of use in the?
So now I'm going to ask you 2-3 questions at a row.
So okay. No. Also offline, we will continue to ask him.
Okay.
So just your view of the regulations on the insurance space. I mean, you are, an expert on the SEBI, and how do you think, I mean, you want to give any suggestions to the government on how, or the regulator, how the regulations in India should be? Would you like to say anything?
So I think there are three different thrusts to regulation that I've seen which have worked elsewhere in the world. The first, which we were discussing when I was still on the call, is the whole issue around transparency, right? Transparency in terms of costs, what is the intermediary getting, what is the value for money that the customer is getting, and transparency also in terms of what sits inside the product, right? So I think SEBI has done its bit in the mutual fund industry, and I'm sure there'll be more developments from IRDA in this regard, both transparency for value for money for the customer and transparency vis-a-vis product contents. So that's one thrust of regulation. The second is the interplay between tax rules. The second is the interplay between tax rules and investment products, right? So as I said, I haven't seen any other country in the world where pension products have taken off without tax breaks, right? That people need to be nudged into retirement saving. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I will today save for retirement, right? I haven't met too many such people. So unless the government gives a tax break on the pension front, it's not obvious to me as to how we will create a pension industry and a retirement savings industry. And that I think is a big priority for the insurance industry should be to go to the government with proof, with tangible data that other countries which gave tax breaks fostered a long-term savings industry, which created greater good for the economy, greater good because cost of capital will come down. And the third is the whole area around selling. How do you sell packaged financial services has always been a tricky subject across the world, including in Western economies, by the way, right? And it is but obvious that when you try to sell packaged financial products, there'll be a degree of mis-selling. So how does the regulator control the distributor, right? Now, interestingly, in this regard, our country actually is three broad regimes. One is the whole area around SEBI and intermediaries who sell SEBI regulated products, and there has been lots of action there on can SEBI actually regulate intermediaries who sell SEBI regulated products. The second is RBI, people who sit in bank branches and sell products, what is the regime applicable to them? And the third is the insurance industry, insurance distributors, insurance brokers, what is the regime? We've got three different regimes on the go in India. I think the regulators need to talk to each other and figure out how to regulate this, because you can have an insurance product which is sold by an insurance broker. The same product can be sold by someone sitting inside a bank branch, and the same product could be sold by a chartered accountant or a lawyer who might not be regulated properly. So I think the whole area around intermediation is critical to the trust piece. Even if we have the best products in the world, unless we get intermediary regulation sorted out, the local dudwala ends up selling packaged financial services products. That's not a good idea.
So would you recommend a unified regulator, because there are separate products, separate regulations?
I mean, whether I recommend it or not, who am I to recommend anything? It's not worked in too many countries, right? So the UK tried the FSA. In fact, one of my first jobs as a graduate out of the LSE was to work for a couple of years to help the UK regulator create the regulatory regime. I did my best, but 10 years later, the UK regulator broke up again. The banking regulators once again separate, mutual funds is separate, insurance is separate. So it's not clear to me that too many countries have had a great deal of success in unified regulation, but at the same time, it's also clear that if you create regulatory arbitrage, which we have today, we have to be honest about it. If you create regulatory arbitrage, where an intermediary says, should I sell an investment product to people like Saurabh and Srinath through a SEBI regulated regime or an IRDA regulated regime, that's not good for anybody. Right? Intermediaries and manufacturers arbitraging regulations is not a healthy regime. So unified regulation hasn't worked. Regulatory cooperation has worked. I think we could do with a little bit more regulatory cooperation across all our regulators, not just SEBI. I think there's RBI to also consider.
So one more question, of course, which I asked other panelists as well. What do you think should be the next reform in the insurance sector? There have been quite a few reforms in the past, especially the last 2 decades. What do you think?
I think I'll before I come to reforms, I think a very simple suggestion.
Said listing of LIC is a reform. I mean,
Now, I think listing of LIC is a momentous occasion for the country. I'm not sure I'll count it as a reform. I think rather than life insurance sahi, I think it'll be great to see a campaign from the industry called Term Life Sahi Hai. I think term life is a product that should be taken up by more people, and term life sahi hai as a product push would be great to see. And I don't think we need a reform for that. I don't think we need a fiat from New Delhi for the insurance industry to promote the whole term life construct. On the subject of reforms, I think we had already had Srinath talk about we need greater transparency. When we buy an insurance product, we don't really know how much of my first year commissions are going to the distributor, how much to the manufacturer. On a trail basis, how much is going to the manufacturer and how much it is going to the intermediary. Leaving aside what's going to the intermediary, on what I'm paying to the manufacturer, what exactly am I paying for? What is the expenses? What is the corpus that I'm putting in my investment pot? I think if IRDA can push through far greater disclosure on the granularity of costs, right? So if we basically give the customer a table that for every 100 rupees you've paid, Mr. Customer, this is the breakdown of where your 100 rupees is going. I think that would be great to see on insurance policy documents.
I think I will seek a comment from Mr. Kumar. Is that possible? Disclosing how much the intermediary gets.
There's nothing wrong with disclosing. In fact, the only issue is that, when insurance still a push product, and that is my problem, that people are not buying it. And if people are, by disclosing all this, if people are going to buy more insurance, I'll be only too happy if that happens. But then there is a doubt still that if I know as a customer that what the intermediary is getting and what other people are getting out of the 100 rupees that I pay the insurance company, whether I'll seriously be interested in buying the product. Because this is a push product, I'm not wanting it at all. Somebody is coming home and selling it to me. That is only probably the gap and that we will have to fill up. And then, yes, but then there's nothing wrong in disclosing that. I agree.
Okay.
So if it's all right, sir, just a counter on that. To the extent that people will need protection and they will need pensions, two different facets, they'll need pensions and they'll need life insurance. If you have similar disclosure across the whole array of products, someone who seeks protection will go towards a product where the first year loading is in his favor rather than the intermediary's favor. And someone who says, I'm not really after protection, I'm well protected, I need an investment product. Someone who needs an investment product will naturally gravitate towards ULIP type construct. At the moment, I think people don't fully understand, at least many people I talk to don't fully understand. And the result is we end up in this bizarre world that even affluent people don't buy health insurance, even though care for diseases like heart diseases or more life-threatening diseases can run into tens of lakhs. So I think the industry will benefit. The insurance industry will see more uptake, but perhaps the uptake will go towards value for money products. Perhaps the greater uptake of the insurance industry might migrate towards value for money products rather than products which are great for the intermediary community.
Okay. So let me ask you a question. Okay. Kumar, go ahead. So Kumar, go ahead.
No, I was saying that I totally agree with that. I mean, it's not that people will certainly go towards a term product in case he finds that, but then this is a long-term philosophy. We will have to work on it, and probably a lot needs to be done in educating intermediaries as well. That perhaps I do know intermediaries who upfront tell their customer that this is what I'm going to get out of this transaction, right? And there are people who do that. It's not that they don't, but then everybody doesn't want to do it. So there are some intermediaries who tell me, sir, do I ask you how much you're getting? So, so in India, this is something we keep fighting in our country. So disclosures, yes, at all levels are welcome. That's what I say.
Saurabh, I ask you one more question. I heard you saying that you gave up your health insurance policy. I mean, was it because of, you felt the claims process is very difficult?
So good point, sir. It's a very good question. What we did was everybody in the office, we grouped together We grouped together, we bought in a benefits consultant, and we negotiated a aggressively negotiated deal with one of the large health insurers. So we realized that individually we were paying I was paying more than 6x what I am paying as a employee of Marcellus. So we have around 50 employees. We negotiated with 3 health insurance manufacturers, and we negotiated a fairly good deal for ourselves. We looked at the terms and conditions, and because we did it as a company, we could hire a consultant who advised us on which were the 2 best policies to go after, right? And in retrospect, I look back and say for last 10 years, I had a overpriced health insurance policy, which gave me sort of frivolous benefits like I could buy, could get a free gift like a suitcase at the year end, which was, good to have. A good suitcase is always useful, but in return, I paid it's probably the most expensive suitcase I've ever got. Now I have got myself covered, family covered, spouses covered, and all my 50 colleagues for far lesser sum of money.
Okay. So, Saurav, I think your closing comments on the subject, how do we really make India a fully insured society? Any points?
So I think the future actually, regardless of what people like me might say or what we might do here, I think there will be greater uptake. So if you look at the data, it's quite incredible. In 70 years of independence, all we have managed to accumulate is $500 billion of financial services products in a country where household wealth is estimated to be 10 trillion, right? As I said, as per RBI, one of the lowest rates of financial penetration anywhere in the world. Most countries our stage of development have around 15% of household wealth in financial services products. Even if you assume, sir, that it will take us 10 years to get there, and we get there at say 1% a year. We are 5 today, 10 years hence we are at 15%. A decade out, we're likely to have around $1.5 trillion of financial savings in our country, right? So that is a massive pot. We're potentially going to triple the financial savings pot in our country in the next 10, 15 years. And obviously, everybody in the financial savings ecosystem will benefit from that, whether it is equities, mutual funds, insurance, life or general. In that context, this is the rising tide will lift all boats. If we can use that momentum to give the customer a fair deal, I think we will ensure the industry's future well beyond the next 10 years.
I think I thank all the panelists. It's been a great webinar, a lot of ideas. We almost had close to 900 registrations for this webinar. So I thank all the participants, all the panelists. It's been a great evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you.
It's been a
Thank you so
pleasure.
much.
Thank you.